two Audis were surrounded on a residential street in Nottingham. Everything this group had built over months, maybe years, came to an abrupt halt. Armed officers rushed in, shouting over each other, weapons raised, headlights cutting through the dark. For most people, it looked like the takedown of a dangerous, organised crime gang. But beneath the surface was something far more complex. A group of men running a quiet, improvised production line, turning blank firing guns into live weapons inside an unassuming garage. And whether you view them as criminals, opportunists, or simply players in a hidden market shaped by supply and demand, their story is a reminder that the underground world doesn't operate in the shadows by accident. It operates there because everything above the surface is locked down tight. The arrests didn't come out of nowhere. They came after months of quiet observation, late-night movements, visits to certain houses, cars arriving and leaving at strange hours. There was nothing glamorous about it, just a slow pattern forming across ordinary streets. One of the first pieces of the puzzle fell into place a day before the dramatic stop, when a BMW was pulled over in Netherfield. Inside was Darren James. The officers found an antique-style revolver, bits of components, and items that suggested he wasn't just a man driving home. But again, one man with a few gun parts isn't a story. It only becomes a story when the parts start connecting. And those connections led back to one address in Mansfield Woodhouse, the home of Andrew Wheelhouse, a 41-year-old who had quietly built a workshop inside his garage. Not a factory in the industrial sense, but something far more intentional. An adapted lathe, a drill press, metal filings on the floor, 15 blank-firing guns stacked near tools used to alter them, and cartridges ready to test the finished product. To some, this was criminal enterprise. To others, it was a man engineering what the law forbids, using skills that, in a different context, might have made him a machinist, a fabricator, or a gunsmith. But here, those same skills moved him into a different category entirely. Blank firing pistols were brought into the garage and left the property capable of firing live rounds. That's the detail that would eventually define this operation. Not the violence that happened, but the violence that could have happened. From Mansfield, the guns travelled to Bilborough, to a house on Canva Close that acted almost like a midway point. This is where Mitch Butterworth, Amrez Mahmood, and Matthew Galloway became key players. They weren't hiding in the shadows. They were popping in and out of the property, sometimes carrying small boxes, sometimes moving silencers or handguns, sometimes just stopping by briefly before driving away. It wasn't chaotic, it was systematic. A chain of hands, each holding something the next person needed. Officers watching the house saw Butterworth move a silencer into a car. On another evening, he returned, carrying a handgun and a few other items. Mahmood joined him on other nights. Then there was Galloway, who appeared to handle the commercial side, the conversations, the connections, the quiet negotiations around who might want these converted firearms. If the garage was the workshop, then Canva Close was the distribution hub. Not glamorous, not dramatic, just functional. But like all supply lines, it didn't stop at one neighbourhood. Another pair of brothers, Reuben and Tyrone Thomas, helped build the next stage: storage, onward movement, and supply. They weren't making guns. They weren't converting guns. They were simply the link between those who could create and those who could buy. In many ways, they represent something people rarely acknowledge. Underground markets don't operate because people want chaos. They operate because someone, somewhere, wants something they can't legally get, and someone else sees an opportunity to provide it. That opportunity stretched beyond Nottingham. Two more men, Loitrim Krasniki and Ergis Zekash, eventually surfaced as recipients of converted weapons in London. The pipeline wasn't just local, it had reach. And it didn't take a massive cartel to build it. It took 10 men, each with their own role, each with their own motivation, each moving quietly because quiet movement is how these things survive. All of that took shape long before the night of the stop, when the two Audis rolled into Bilborough on April 22nd, 2021. The men inside weren't expecting anything more than another exchange, another movement of firearms, another night where nothing changed. Instead, flashing lights and armed officers brought it all to a halt. Inside the cars, police found a gun, a loaded magazine, and rounds. A simple discovery with extremely layered consequences. A search of the nearby Bilborough address uncovered even more. 2 short-barreled converted guns, ammunition, a loaded magazine, and a silencer. Again, nothing chaotic, just the remains of a process that had been running consistently and quietly. It's easy to look at a discovery like that and see only danger. But behind every illegal gun is a reason it exists. Someone wanted it, someone paid for it, someone created a market, and someone, like Wheelhouse and the others, stepped forward to meet it. When officers finally raided the Mansfield Woodhouse garage in July 2021, it confirmed everything they suspected. 15 blank firing pistols, around 40 blank cartridges, an adapted lathe, a drill press, tools used not for maintenance, but for transformation. Metal shavings, small details that told a bigger story. This wasn't experimentation, it was production. Quiet, deliberate, and purposeful. For some, that makes the group dangerous. For others, it shows a kind of determination, the same determination you see in legitimate industries, just operating outside legal boundaries. It's a reminder that the line between engineering and criminality is far thinner than many realise. It often depends only on what you choose to build. The case moved to Nottingham Crown Court, where 8 of the men faced charges after a 7-week trial. The sentences were long. Butterworth received 12 years and 4 months. Wheelhouse got 11. Galloway also received 11. Tyrone Thomas was sentenced to 8 years and 3 months. Reuben Thomas to 7 years and 6 months. Mahmoud to 6 years and 8 months. Krasniqi to 6 years. Zekaj to nearly 7. Others, like Darren James and Umar Alam, received additional prison time. Altogether, the group received 79 years. A number that highlights how seriously the law treats firearm conversion, even when the guns never fired a shot. Investigators later described the operation as a production line, noting how each member played a specific role. But description is just perspective. From another angle, it was a network of men navigating supply, demand, and the tight restrictions of UK firearms law. And while the courts measured the risk in years of prison time, the truth is more nuanced. Most of these men weren't masterminds. They were parts of a system. Sometimes for profit, sometimes for survival.
Keep your hands where I can see them!
Because the underground market offered opportunities the regular world didn't. In the end, this wasn't a Hollywood gun ring or a cartel operation. It was a garage, a few cars, several tools, and a chain of people who worked quietly and consistently, until the night the quiet ended. The weapons factory is gone now. The pipeline has been disrupted. But the story raises questions that go deeper than arrests, about how underground markets function, why people step into them, and how, even in the most tightly controlled countries, supply always finds demand. And in this case, the men at the centre weren't villains from a film. They were just people who built something the law didn't allow, and kept it running until the day the blue lights finally cut through the dark.